I want to thank all the speakers for paying attention to the hook so carefully. So we actually have about 10 minutes of extra time. The cafeteria does not open until 11:30, so this time is available to us for comments. There are microphones in the room. Questions for our three speakers from this morning. I'm a little bit reluctant to ask you to all come up unless there is actually a question. I'd love to see some questions, though, that would need your participation. Anybody? Comment or questions for our speakers? There are microphones here in the middle of the room. We've got a volunteer.
I'll give you the shot.
Give us your name and where you're from, and then go ahead.
Sure. Eric Chetkin, Harvard University. This is for Philip Stark. I enjoy your presentation very much. I think it sets the ground very well for the rest of the meeting. I just had two comments / questions, which is, one, you presented the randomized trial as sort of the gold standard, but as we very well know, there is no such thing as a randomized trial. There are all kinds of complications that arise, missing data, non-compliance among them, and I wonder if you could comment on that in fact most randomized trials end up being observational studies. The second comment I wanted to make was about the comment about DAGs and the assumption that all common causes are represented under the DAG. In the past 5 to 6 years, there's been an extension of that theory, so-called ADMG, acyclic directed mixed graphs that allow for unmeasured latent variables, and there's a whole theory of identification in that context, and I wonder if you could also comment on that. So the theory has moved ahead beyond what Pearl and other people had 20 years ago. All right. All right, thank you. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks very much. So the rabbit's still entering the hat somewhere. To answer the last question first, I guess. I mean, the mathematical theory is elegant, but the connection between the mathematical theory and the real world is tenuous and needs to be checked in every application. I just don't believe that there's general purpose inferential hardware that's context-free. And I know there are people in the room who disagree with me, so with regard to there not being randomized controlled trials, I mean, I do agree that especially if you're using human beings, there's always going to be compliance issues, et cetera. Some of them can be handled conservatively, depending on the direction of inference that you're trying to make. Missing data problems, I'm not a big believer, for instance, in modeling missing data. I'm a big believer in leaving them missing and taking that into account in the inferences that you make, depending on what direction you're trying to draw a conclusion. I don't know what, it is the gold standard. I do think that there are observational studies that carry enormous weight, and Snow was an example. There are others as well. And I just think that we always need to be worrying about confounding and assessing the quality of the experiments that we do carefully.
So I think we have a follow-up comment here as well.
Yeah, I want to expand on that and ask.
Give us your name and.
Oh, I'm Richard Shyness. Yep. I'm a speaker this afternoon from Carnegie Mellon, and I'm one of the authors of the technology that you are unhappy with. So first, let me say that I think there is no conflict, and there's something odd, straw-manish going on here, because nobody from the community I'm in who does anything like algorithmic discovery believes that you're doing things assumption-free. There's lots of assumptions that have to go into it. The variables you measure have to be defined in such a way that causation is plausible. There's all kinds of other assumptions that one makes parametrically about doing any tests, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that everybody's on the same page of you can't possibly pull a rabbit out of a hat with no rabbits. So that said, I think the spirit of the work is and always has been, instead of trying to determine a particular exact causal relationship, is trying to get us suggestions for relationships that the data actually provide evidence for. And then I think your suggestion, which I fully agree with, that we always follow it up with an experiment or a set of experiments, and the problems in doing experiments in certain domains where there's bad stuff like tobacco is legion. But I think that's a part and parcel of the whole paradigm. So I don't think there's any disagreement. But what I'm really confused about is this perspective that there is no general inferential tool, or there is no general inferential tool that does anything to help us with causality. If you give up the idea that people are claiming there is an inferential tool that doesn't need human input and will pull rabbits out of a hat causally, and instead you say, in the tools set that people use to make causal inferences, to do causal science, right, there are many, including statistics, right, to do permutation tests, as you pointed out so nicely, including multiple regression, which is a way to test conditional relationships in certain parametric contests, including causal search algorithms, which have limitations that aren't well understood. But if one pulls away from the idea that the claim is that causation is being pulled out of a hat, and instead says, this is another tool that's giving us a way to say what the evidence we have and the assumptions we're willing to make, what it will tell us or not tell us about causation, I don't see we have any conflict. So I mean, this is an argument, and I'll talk more about this afternoon, that we had with your mentor, let's see, 17, this is 35 years ago now. So it's a long, no, 25 years ago. It's an awful long time. So I'm still utterly puzzled about why we have this conflict. There is no conflict.
Any response to that, or?
I mean, on the one hand, I agree with much of what you say, and if you view the tool as a tool for exploratory data analysis, I have no problem with it at all. But the claims that are being made, right now you're not making claims this strong, but papers, the book, whatever, make much stronger claims that causal structure is being discovered. Okay, all right. Fine. Withdraw.
Okay, we have time for one minute of comment here.
Hi, I'm Sue Norton. I'm an ecologist, coming at this from a little bit of a different direction. Dr. Stark, I think, presented a nice distinction of whether we are doing causation to establish that an agent is capable of causing an effect, whether we're using our analysis to determine the conditions under which an agent will cause an effect, or whether we're interested in establishing that an agent did cause an effect in a specific instance. And I would like to see our group be careful about distinguishing the purpose for what we're trying to do our analyses for throughout the day. I think that would be helpful. That's my comment.
All right, thank you very much for that comment, and thank you for the discussion. Thank you to the morning speakers. We will reconvene at 12:30 on the dot. And there is lunch available in the cafeteria down the stairs. So.